Hey. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Darylyn, and today you may have noticed that I finally managed to wear a white shirt for a video where I'm not repotting. Go me. So last week I released a video called Common Plants That I Still Haven't Gotten the Hang of. No, it wasn't common plants. So last week I put out a video called Plants I Still Haven't Gotten the Hang of, Failing at Easy Plants. And it got a lot of really nice feedback, and it was pretty rough and brutal for me to kind of like put myself out there like that and admit that I wasn't doing a very good job with some of them, but everyone was super sweet and nice, and I actually got some really good tips on a few of them. And since people seem to like that video, I was thinking maybe we could do the flip side today, and I would show you some notoriously difficult or finicky plants that I have in my care that I feel like I have a really solid understanding of how to keep happy and where I feel like I'm being successful. You will probably notice that this video is going to be quite a bit shorter than the previous video detailing my lack of success. And that should probably tell you all you need to know, really. But let's get into it. But before we do, if you could please do me a solid and give this video a like, maybe even subscribe. It would really help me out with the YouTube algorithm, and I would love to have you join my little community. Additionally, don't be shy. Please join the conversation in the comments below. I'm still able to pretty much respond to everyone's comments, and I would love to chat with you. And with that business out of the way, let's get on with it. Okay, so I think there's probably no plant with a greater reputation for being finicky in our community than the Queen Anthurium. And I can attest to the fact that these girls do have very specific needs. And that need is mostly that they really need to have really healthy roots. That's kind of given for any plant, really, in my mind. But the thing about the Queen Anthurium's roots is that they're a bit more sensitive than some other Anthurium. They're a bit thin, and these girls really don't like change, and they really need consistency. Even though, you know, you can see on mine, there's a little bit of a blemish right here, and this leaf is a little bit crispy. This is where I'm at with this plant since I took it out of my grow tent and put it into self-watering, and she is doing great. She hasn't declined in any visible way. She still looks solid, and I am extremely proud of this plant. I think really the key with Queen Anthurium is that you just need to make sure that their roots are very healthy and very solid, and then they really like consistency. They don't like to dry out. They do really well in semi-hydro, and honestly, they can be acclimated to much lower humidity than people really think that they want, as long as they have good solid roots and they have access to water in a way that they want to have access to it. So my biggest tip for any budding Queen Anthurium owners is that if you get your plant from an import, the roots are probably going to decline. You need to keep it somewhere in really high humidity in a very light and airy substrate like sphagnum moss. I had mine in perlite and moss mixed together with a reservoir, and you're gonna have to just let it chill there until it grows some really solid healthy roots. And then once you are satisfied with the amount of root that it has, then you can transition it out of the super high humidity and let it acclimate to something a bit more reasonable. My humidity in here is about 60% usually, but you know, I've heard people acclimating their Queen Anthurium down to as low as, you know, like low 50s. So it really isn't so mysterious. I think it's just that their roots are a little bit more sensitive, and you just have to be a little bit patient and set them up to succeed. So I'm pretty confident with Queen Anthurium. It's been a long journey to get here, but there you go. All right, the second notoriously finicky plant that I have in my care that is absolutely thriving is Philodendron Luxurians. Now, this plant is somewhat of an enigma, I think, amongst aroid collectors. It is notorious for shipping like trash, which is true. And it's also notorious for just up and dying in the conditions that are kind of the conventional wisdom for what this plant wants. What you hear from people is that like, oh, Philodendron Luxurians, it's such a diva, it's so difficult, it needs super, super high humidity, and it needs to be, you know, in shade, it doesn't like direct light. Well, recently, there's been some discourse in the community that kind of challenges the conventional wisdom on Philodendron Luxurians. And what people are finding is that actually this plant really prefers an environment that is very, very bright, but not direct sun, but very, very bright, very, very dry, meaning that it does not have wet foliage, and then it doesn't want its roots to fully dry out. I can attest to this. My Philodendron Luxurians, I have two different ones. Actually, let me grab the other one because she's right here. So this is my more juvenile one. Woo, look at her on camera. She's looking good. Oh man. Oh, okay, sorry. My Philodendron Luxurians are absolutely thriving. I mean, this is a veritable tiny bush. Thriving in my bedroom in humidity in the low 60s. This one lives on my nightstand under a light. This one lives on my dresser next to a bunch of grow lights. They are absolutely thriving. They literally will not stop growing. I got this plant back in, I think, April, and she has just not stopped growing. When I got her, I think she only has like one of her original leaves. Like, there's like 5 leaves in just a couple of months. This plant will not stop growing. This plant, same thing. When I got it, it only had this leaf, and I'm not really sure what this damage is from, but its new leaf came out almost immediately, absolutely breathtaking. And now it's pushing out another one. And the larger plant is a little bit of a slower grower than the smaller plant, but it's just absolutely been thriving in these conditions. I just put moss on top of it, and then when the moss is dry, like right now, I kind of just stick my finger into the soil, and if it feels dry, then I water it. With this one, I kind of do the same thing. I stick my finger into the substrate, and if it feels dry, I bottom water it. And look at that. This one, for whatever reason, doesn't really want to grow into its substrate, so I think I need to put it into a little bit of a different situation. I think it's gonna like the tree fern mix, but they're thriving. Like, you absolutely do not need to put this plant into 90% humidity. In fact, that would probably make it rot. The other thing that I've noticed about this plant that is incredible is that it has absolutely no problem pushing its leaves out in humidity in the low 60s, high 50s. My Philodendron Chaco red, which are absolutely not known as being finicky plants at all, they a lot of times will have issues punching through their leaves, punching through their petioles, ripping themselves apart if I don't either lubricate them a little bit or just pop them in my grow tent to help them push their leaves out. These are like rock solid. I mean, rock solid. The thing about them is that if you do import them, you're probably gonna have trashed roots and a lot of leaf liability. But if you're able to get one, you know, locally, good luck with that. Or from an established, reputable seller domestically, you know, in the United States for me, but domestically to wherever you are, and they are able to ship it to you without disturbing the roots, I mean, you could see really, really good results, and they're really, really easygoing plants. I think that it's kind of like the Queen Ethereum, where they like consistency. Their roots are a little bit more sensitive than maybe some other plants. They are very fine, and they don't like to dry out. Other than that, they're super, super easy. Like, I highly recommend these. They're a great houseplant because bright and dry is very, very, very easy to provide in a house. So, absolutely love these plants. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Probably my favorite, like, plant overall, and just really not as intimidating as a lot of people kind of thought that they were for a long time. So, yeah, if you can get your hands on one of these, I definitely recommend you give it a try. All right, so The next one that I would like to talk about today is actually the Monstera Elbow. Now, I have 4 Monstera Elbow, and I will tell you that the level of difficulty with the plant is directly proportionate to how much white is on the plant. White variegation is just really fragile and really finicky. I will also say that I have had the most success with my Monstera Elbow that I got as a very small plant, and it's grown up in my conditions, and that plant is pristine. It's it's basically perfect. None of the white is browning for the most part, and I'm really, really proud of myself because it was my first elbow and I kind of just was flying by the seat of my pants a little bit. But I think the key to keeping that plant happy has actually been to water it very sparingly, because excess moisture really does brown the variegation. Well, I found that to be true as well with my larger elbows. This plant I got as a fairly large mature specimen, and as you can see, there is a little bit of browning on the white patch here. But for the most part, this plant is a very balanced variegate, which is definitely helpful if you are looking to buy a much more mature variegated elbow monstera, because they're just a lot more resilient. I also have another elbow monstera that I bought in a very mature form that has a lot of half moons, and it definitely took a huge hit from shipping and acclimating and then not having as much light as it wanted, and then, you know, I unfortunately did lose a couple of roots to root rot. It's just been really difficult to acclimate, but for the most part, all of my elbows are doing really, really, really well, and I think the secret really is to water sparingly. Make sure that the substrate that they're in is very well draining. Something that I have heard in the past is that a lot of epiphytes actually really like the phenomena of water running over their roots rather than actually being in a substrate that's really moisture retaining. So I actually think that I am planning on converting these 2 bigger elbows to a mix that has a lot more bark and charcoal in it and less, you know, potting soil. But my one elbow that is out in my living room, my OG elbow, the one I've had the longest, she's doing phenomenal. She looks amazing. Her variegation just keeps getting more and more beautiful, and she barely has a blemish on her. And so these plants are notoriously finicky, I can attest to that, but she's thriving and she's doing wonderful and great, and I'm super, super, super proud of that. One last thing as a little bit of a bonus is Calathea. I have had a lot of success with keeping my Calathea alive, so much so that, for better or for worse, I recently got a few more. Yeah. The secret with Calathea is that they really, really just don't want to dry out, and they really are low light plants. They're very particular about the amount of filtered light that they get. They do not like direct light, they do not like bright light, and they absolutely do not want to dry out, and they need filtered water at the very least, but distilled water is preferable. There can be some chemicals and minerals found in tap water that will burn the leaves on a Calathea, but this Calathea Warwickii is doing phenomenal. She's absolutely gorgeous, but yeah, doing great, thriving, super happy. These are notorious for being finicky, fickle, high humidity. They get spider mites super easily. Just stay on top of your systemic pest treatment and make sure they don't dry out, and give them that filtered water, and you know, you will probably have a pretty good chance of doing really well with them. This one actually is drying out really fast. It already needs to be watered, so I'll probably take care of that after I'm done filming this video. But I love Calathea. I'm so glad I'm able to keep them happy for the most part. I would encourage any of you who's maybe thinking about taking the plunge on a really expensive plant or a rare plant that you're kind of nervous about, maybe try a Calathea first, because it will give you some good practice in kind of like reading what a plant wants and like figuring it out and responding to it. And if you can take care of a Calathea, you can take care of most finicky plants, I would say. There are many, many exceptions to that rule. But yeah, so bonus, Calathea. Calathea. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed me kind of bragging about my successes, but I hope you also can take away from this that if I can get some of these plants to cooperate, you totally can too. It's just a matter of patience and kind of fine-tuning and responding to what they want. If anyone has any questions about these particular plants, or if there's a plant you're struggling with that you want to ask me about, maybe I actually have some other plants that are finicky that I forgot about, but yeah, let me know. I'm happy to try and help anyone as much as I can. And other than that, thank you guys so much for chilling with me. I really did kind of have a lot of fun kind of showing off my successes instead of roasting myself. I feel like I do tend to roast myself a lot on this channel, which is actually kind of fun too. But sometimes it is nice to remind myself that I am more than a hot garbage mess. So with that in mind, I will see you in the next one. Bye!